Hi, my name's Evan Kraayenbrink. I grew up near Guelph, Ontario. I started as a primary care paramedic in the beginning of 2019. I started prior to the pandemic. So my personal situation is I was working as a paramedic. I understood these vaccines to be voluntary, and some people would take them, some people wouldn't. And I agreed with that at the time. It started getting uncertain and surprising when suddenly it was no longer being an option. It was becoming mandatory, and I did not agree with that whatsoever. I got quite concerned about it. That's one of the things that caused me to reach out to as many people as I could, and there was no opportunity to go back and say, what about an alternative? Testing was not accepted. There were no alternatives that I could take. I was going to lose my job or I take this vaccination. Initially, I wasn't sure of what resources I might have to take a stand. I knew I wanted to take a stand and make a difference whichever way I could. And that's when I was talking to anyone and everyone that I could speak to. And I talked to my grandfather, who knew about the Justice Center and had a high regard for the Justice Center. And through him, I looked up the Justice Center website. I sent away a submission form. Included in that was my situation with my job, my stand against the vaccination passports, and my concerns. I included in there also a bit of the story of my grandfather. They came to Canada in 1949, but in 1945, on March the 2nd, there was 46 people that were shot just beside their house. That was a result of, you could say, severe government overreach at that time. And that's a different time, a different place, but it is not that long ago. And I hear these stories firsthand from my grandfather, and he still talks about them today. He still remembers the gunshots, and it was a terrible time. And there's lessons that we should learn from that, and that has made an impact on me all my life. And especially in this time, I've realized that freedom is not free. It comes with a cost. It's so important that we take a stand whichever way we can to stand up for what's lawful and morally right. I would say these stories has made a huge impact on how I view life in general and how I view freedoms and realize that it is fragile. Also how I view human nature in a sense. A lot of the people that allowed those things to happen were good people, you could say. A lot of people thought what was happening was good for the country, it was for the best, and they weren't aware of the tragedy that would follow afterwards. And I realize we are in a different time, a different place, but what happened at that time is the end result of losing your freedoms. So I had never envisioned that I would lose my job over not taking a vaccine. I thought it would remain voluntary, and I was perhaps a little foolish in thinking that, but that was my hope. When the time came where you must get vaccinated or you're going to be placed on unpaid leave, I wasn't sure what to do. I kept working. I was working full-time hours. I love my job as a paramedic and serving others. I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus is my personal Savior and that He came to serve others. One of my favorite Bible verses says, "And whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men." And that's my goal, to serve other people. I was working as a paramedic. Then on November 10, I got called into the office mid-shift, and they brought me in and said, you need to get vaccinated now or we're going to send you home. So I tried to discuss with them, but there was no discussion. It was either you follow the policy that we made or you're going to get sent home. I said, I'm not going to make this choice. And so they sent me home mid-shift, immediately placed on unpaid leave. We weren't allowed to respond to calls going back to the station. I had to take my things and leave the buildings. After that, the process was hoping that, they're going to reinstate us at some point. It wasn't too long before we got a letter saying, no, you're going to face full termination as of February 14, 2022. That happened. February 14, I got an email, arrived in my inbox saying, you're now terminated. That was another difficult day. Seems like a long time ago, but it really was only a year ago. Our latest hearing was held in November of 2022. This hearing was a 2-day hearing, and arguments were made by the Justice Center against the vaccination passports. They, I believe, had very strong arguments as to why they were against the charter. Unfortunately, the case was dismissed by the judge. Currently, we are in the appeals process for this case. I am hopeful that justice will prevail. I feel that the case is a very, very strong one in this situation. I do realize it takes a lot of money and a lot of resources, but I consider it well worth it. This is something that doesn't affect just one or two people, it affects the entire country. These cases are very important. They affect millions of Canadians. I would urge you to support the work of the Justice Centre.